Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of A Chat with the STEM Sisters. With me, Ami Bakare,
I'm Bandu Bayan.
and today we are talking about literally my favorite topic,
Why
which
is this your
is
favorite
it's my favorite topic. I'm so passionate about setting boundaries at work because I cannot come and kill myself, for
topic?
job that my grandfather did not start the company. It's a lie. I can't do it. So, yes, that's why this topic is near and dear to my heart.
And I think that it's difficult because I think probably in most fields, but I think in STEM, we've talked about in other episodes where you're constantly trying to prove yourself. It's just one hurdle after another. And I shouldn't say hurdle, but one milestone after another. So you're constantly trying to prove yourself, and people might take proving yourself in a positive way as I'm not going to have restrictions
Yeah.
on, what I'm available to do or able to do. So I'd love to hear more about how you have tackled this. And then, I'll talk about it a little bit.
Yeah. So for me, kind of obviously when you're younger at work, people just assume you don't have anything else that you're doing. You don't have anything else that you're doing. And also when you're, kind of just starting out. So for me, because I did like a career change, when I was kind of just new in this career, I was very like excited, just happy to be here. I wanted to dedicate all my time. Like I couldn't wait. And I noticed around me that when you come with that kind of young energy, people cannot wait to use that. Like people cannot wait to honestly overuse it. And so I learned very early on, like if you don't set boundaries, people are going to give or people are going to take as much as you're willing to give. And so for me, how I set those boundaries is that I decide how much am I willing to give in the first place. Because if you work for, a decent company, work for a place where people truly do value their employees, like I said, they're going to take whatever you give. And so for me, how I set those boundaries is I come up with what is the amount of time what is my schedule for the day, first and foremost. What's my schedule for the day? And then I try to really, really stick to that. And you ultimately teach the people around you like how they should use you. So if you're always available, you're interested in taking meetings before 8 o'clock and you're scheduling meetings at 7 o'clock in the morning, you're also on until like 6, then that is how people are going to use you. But honestly, you'll get tired really fast. And so coming up with your schedule and sticking to it really truly does help.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that that's super important because it just comes back to that general statement of you teach people how to treat you, in general, right? So it's not different in the workplace. And so I definitely agree with you. I want to just come back to the why and why particularly it's been so important for you to set professional boundaries, and what the impact has been with setting these boundaries.
Well, that's a good question. The why is because I've learned maybe in a really difficult way that, I mean, your job will be there. Those people will be there. The loved ones in your family, they might not be there. And so when I started out, where I work, like at the company that I work now, I was, like I said, super eager, couldn't wait to like prove myself and all of that. And so the job was kind of demanding. And because I was the only Black person on the team, also the only girl developer. So we've already talked about imposter syndrome. This kind of ties into it. But feeling like I wanted to overprove myself made it so that I really just gave more of myself than I should have. And I had a 6-month-old daughter at the time, had a dad to like care for as well, and like a demanding job. And I don't let me lie here, because I was still taking care of all those people, but I was just sacrificing myself. But one of the regrets for me is not taking more time. Like I should have taken more time and felt less guilty, because even though I was doing all of the stuff that I felt like I needed to do at that time to balance my work life, I still put a lot of guilt on myself for taking the time. And ultimately, I should have taken more time, because um, shortly after I started working, here, like, I mean, our dad passed away. And so I remember going back to work and people were like, "Oh, like, let us know if there's anything that we can do." And I just remember being so upset and feeling like, well, the thing that you can do is give you my time back. The thing that you can do is, when I was saying that I needed to like go do something or whatever, is like to almost not make me feel worse than I already feel, because I am trying to like knock it out of the park, because I am trying to be amazing at work, giving me that support to do what it is that I needed to do at that time. And so after coming back after that situation, I realized like these people are going to be here. This work is going to be here. The people in your life, they may or may not be here. And so those memories, that time, I mean, you can't get that back. And so that's probably why I'm like a strong advocate for setting professional boundaries. But I'm curious for you, like, what's your thing? Like, what makes you passionate about it as well?
You know, obviously we are sisters
Uh-huh.
biologically and not just you know, through STEM. So I think for me, similar reasons. I think mine started, you know, back when our mom was sick. You know, I had a very difficult time trying to balance, you know, being in graduate school and doing that work and focusing on what was going on with my mom. And it was interesting or serendipitous. I don't know the term for it, but my mom would be getting treatment, you know, on the same campus that I was doing research. And especially in the beginning, I was still in the part of my PhD where I was taking coursework, and so I remember going to visit her and, you know, and hang out with my dad. And we would have to, you know, get food, make sure like things were, you know, okay and set up. And, you know, of course, my parents wanted me to be around to speak to the physicians and things like that. But then I would, you know, look at my watch and it'd be time to go to class. And so a lot of times I would be late to class. And I knew what that looked like. It looked like, oh, here she goes. She's late to class again. And nobody knew where I was coming from. Like my professors, you know, nobody knew that I was just, you know, in the next building, you know, in the hospital, like with my parents. And so I again, like Ami was saying, and you feel that guilt, like, oh, now I don't look like I'm high performing. I don't look like
Mhm.
I'm supposed to be here. Everybody probably thinks I'm only here because I'm Black anyway. And
Yeah.
here I am showing up late. And I actually had to turn things on and off. Like as you enter the classroom, now you actually can't be thinking about what's going on. You have to be present and, you know, paying attention. And it wasn't until, you know, much later, you know, that someone actually asked me, because it was a class I was normally doing really well in, that I started, you know, struggling in. And that's when I had to just admit, like, I have these other things going on. And I think that that's when I started to realize that I was going to have to make more time for what was going on in my, what I like to call my real life, and try to find a balance. And so that led to me once I joined the lab, I figured out a different schedule. I was coming into lab very early in the morning, about 5 in the morning, and I would work until about 10. You know, leave, go spend time with my mom. You know, eat lunch with her. We would watch, you know, what is it, Steve Harvey, Family Feud. You know, we would hang out until like 3 or 4 or until someone else came home. And then I would go back to the lab for like a few more hours. And just like Ami was saying, like what I regret the most is like, I wish I would have just, like, I didn't have to go back to lab. I wish I would have just stayed with her the rest of the day. Like, and as a lot of you know, we lost our mother. And that is the one regret that I have, is you can't get the time back. But this PhD is going to be there. That job, it's going to be there. But the people will not. And so it became very, very important to me to not have these work or school demands impede on that time, because my mom, she wasn't there when I graduated. So it's like, it just became very, very clear that it's so important to prioritize what's actually important to you. And I had my mentor actually ask me, and then I'll send it back to you, if it was going to be more important to me to get a Nobel Prize or have a large family, or be with my family. And, I realized that some scientists do feel that way, that having a Nobel Prize, which is that's insanely, something that a lot of people look up to, Nobel laureates, but you never know like what their family life was like, what they sacrificed, to have these accolades. And I had to really think about it. And after I lost my mom, I was like, oh, it's not worth it to me. It's not worth it to me, because there was nothing that was going to be worth, that time I had with her. So I think that's when I already had it a little bit, but that's when it kind of sunk in that it's super important to let people know, like, at 5, I have to leave. Maybe you're not comfortable telling them why. I absolutely was not comfortable telling people why. Mm-hmm. But it was very, very important to me to set those boundaries during that time. So,
yeah. I mean, the telling people why part is also, to me, a boundary as well. And I get it that like some people aren't comfortable with you not telling them why. So that sparks a different discussion on boundaries, because some people really, really, for some reason, they need to know. They need to know, what is it that you're doing? Why are you doing it? Where are you going? And for me, I'm naturally, for sure, not a person that shares. For sure, I'm not the kind of person that's gonna like be friends with people at work. Like, I'm usually not the kind of person that like overshares. But joining the kind of company that I, work for, I realized that was the culture. Like, the culture here is that people overshare. People love to like know stuff. And if you don't share stuff, then it makes it seem like you're not friendly, which that's a thing somebody has told me.
No, you're not friendly. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, like, I'm not overly friendly, but like at work, I'm the kind of person where like, I'm here to do my work. Like, are we here to make friends, or are we here to do the job? That's how I feel.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because that is something that actually comes up. I recently was able to interview Minda Harts, the author of the memo, and she actually mentions that in her book. It's sometimes that's cultural. Like, some people want to come to work and talk to you all about their kids. The kids started talking, and the flowers just started blooming, and they just got a haircut. Like, they really want to share what's going on in their personal lives. And just in some cultures, it's like actually inappropriate to like come to work and talk about the things that are going on in your personal life. But then to some people that comes off as, oh, you're not a team player. You don't ask enough questions. You're not involved enough. But it's because
we don't know you.
You're a stranger.
You're a stranger.
You're, in fact, a complete stranger.
We don't know each other.
So I think that sometimes it gets difficult, right? So if you're a person that wants to set boundaries, how do you maneuver the whole professional setting that expects you to share all these things that are going on in your life? Oh my gosh, Nicole's tooth is loose. We don't know when it's going to fall out. And you're like, do I need to know that? I don't know if I need to know. But I think what it is that people in certain cultures, they really do feel like to get to know you, they have to know, these things about you. And I think for me, I just am not comfortable. And so those are
Which
the
is
boundaries.
fair.
If I've told you, then like you're my friend and I love you. And shout out to, I saw we had a comment from Dr. Chopra, who's my lab sibling, and he knows a lot of stuff about me.
I mean, some of the best advice that I ever received at work was, find one thing, because they were like, find one thing that you're comfortable sharing with your coworkers, whatever that thing might be. She was like, if it's about your kids, pick that thing. If it's about gardening, pick that thing. Like if it's about shopping, she was like, pick one thing and let that be the thing that you like share with people at work. And I was like, okay, like it seemingly has been like working for you. So like, fine, like I'll try it. And let me tell you, it's a world of difference. I have picked that one thing and I will just talk about that thing. Like we can chat all day about it if people want. If you don't want, that's also fine. But yeah, I think that picking that thing, I think that that's a really good compromise between like, okay, I'm not coming in here to tell you like all my business. I'm not going to tell you all my business, but like I can tell you a little bit about this part of my life if that makes you feel more comfortable. And also for me, obviously a motivator is that I'm trying to be where the money resides, right? And so if more money or more opportunities open up for me just sharing with you that like my kid maybe pooped everywhere. If you want to know, I can tell you.
Yes, done it.
If you want to know, I can share, no problem. So like that's the thing I picked. I'll tell you all the really silly things that my child does if that's what makes you feel more comfortable with me.
Now, I do want to
No
get to
problem.
where that's a great segue because I want to get to where that can backfire.
Okay.
And that is when, and you can tell me if this has happened or, anybody watching, if this has happened to you, leave a comment, let us know, is when you don't feel like there is any line between work and, school/the workplace. And I think, of course, now in these COVID times, that is even more apparent because we are actually working in our homes. A lot of us are working in our homes. And so the things that we were able to keep secret or keep, private are not private anymore because your kid has just walked in on your Zoom meeting or, they can hear your husband, eating right here. Like,
Mhm.
So you're a little less able to do it. But even in person, when we were back in person, things like having to give your personal cell phone number to your boss or teammates, which I will say that was I was always very against that. And I was just always very against that. I come from the ilk of if you're not paying for the phone bill or contributing, then the office phone will do. Not so. Or
I have,
email.
I have a
Email
very horrible
because
story about this.
why are you it's my cell phone has a bill, but then you're not.
So like when I joined this company, I assumed like everybody gets a phone. They were on some like, oh, the people who are technical resources don't get phones. And so I was like, okay, so you're not gonna call me. It's wonderful. I like it.
That means you're not gonna call me, right?
They called me, oh, they called. The way that they started the way that it turned into like, oh, okay, like let's have each other's numbers for like a phone tree or something. And me out of like inexperience, honestly, I was like, oh, okay, like so everybody gave their number. Okay, so I guess I'll give my number. The way that I was in, where was I? Going to Sam's Club. It was like after work. It's like 6 o'clock. Heading to Sam's Club, had picked my daughter up from daycare, going to the store. I got a manager in my phone, my real phone, talking about, oh, and such is off. And like, oh, could you log in and can you fix it? And me being like, I am driving. Get out of here. Go away. Go away. Mind your business.
And
Mind
see,
your business.
that's where you it's a thin line, because now if I don't respond or I'm not responsive, then I don't look like a team player. I don't look like, I'm, easy to communicate with, or, all the things that, let's be honest, as a Black woman, you cannot risk being labeled
Yeah.
as, because there's already a million daggers, just ready to be thrown at you. And so to not be, available, or the way that you communicate is, she's just inapproachable, or am I inapproachable, or is it 7 p.m. and this is my personnel phone? So,
That
I
was the
think
last
that,
straw.
and my thing is, if you don't establish those boundaries like early on, once you have gone, you have gone like one, because you can't now block people from calling you.
Well, you kind of so like I didn't block nobody, but I did after that. That was it. So that was when I was like, don't call me no more. If y'all gonna call, you gonna call me, go on ahead and first of all pay me more. So number one, number two, give me another phone, because like what are you, this is not this is my real phone that nobody's paying for, and like you shouldn't be able to, like, I don't believe that your job should have 100% access to you 24/7. That's not healthy.
Well, let me talk about a very unhealthy, or what can be a very unhealthy environment, and that is the lab environment, especially when you are a doctoral student, right? So people who are getting their PhDs are in this very weird position between being an employee and being a student. You are grown, and you're getting paid poverty level amounts of money, but you are getting paid. So like you are employed, but then in the beginning, like you took coursework, and yes, this is part of your training. And so you are a student technically. So you just live in like this in-between matrix world where the person who is in charge of like your academic progress is also like your boss. So it's a very strange place. So you are also trying to be professional, and that you're also trying to, achieve this academic status that you enrolled for, right? And so you spend so much time in this environment that you even forget, like, this is my job. Like, I don't think I'm supposed to sleep in here or be eating in here. But you hear so many stories of people just like, oh yeah, I ran experiments all night, and I just, slept in the extra, like people who were sleeping in lab. I remember I probably shouldn't tell these stories, but like when you're not supposed to eat in lab, but you know that you can't really leave to eat. And so you're just sneaking food and eating in the corner. Because you're like, I don't think I can leave. I don't know if I'm allowed to leave, lest I look lazy, lest I look like, somebody who's not going to do the experiment more than 3 times, because 3 times is all you really want and need. But who went over and beyond, and who wants to leave before their boss or arrive later than their boss, right? It's just the optics of it all. So the lines are just so blurred that you see graduate students just living in the lab, life just passing them by, Thanksgivings passing them by, weddings, all kinds of life events passing them by because they don't want to look unprofessional. And so that is just a mistake. Like I said, I always try to tell graduate students, those things will be there. Like, you're brilliant, you're hardworking, or you wouldn't be there. But don't miss like your niece's christening, to run another experiment, right? So don't miss like your nephew's championship soccer game to run another experiment, things like that. It's just not worth it.
And so what I think is, so that's an interesting perspective, just because I'm obviously coming from an area that's not like that. And so I didn't know that. So it's good to know. But I think what it comes down to in a lot of these, like, work-life balance discussions or setting those boundaries, is it comes down to, what kind of leader do you have? So what kind of manager do you have? What kind of, director, senior director, what kind of leadership are you tied to? Because I feel like some of the best leaders that I've had have been people who they themselves value work-life balance. So like they are also like, I'm not going to bother you. Somebody told me about this potential problem. Is this an emergency, or is this something that has maybe been broken for like a week? And so therefore it could be broken for another evening. Like we can fix it tomorrow. We can just fix it tomorrow. And I don't have to bother my team at like 7 o'clock at night. To me, those are the best leaders. And I think that that is, I mean, that's the difference, I think, of like a regular teammate and like now you're a leader, like now you're a manager, you're a director, or whatever, is being able to protect your team, especially in the IT space. So when you're in IT, I mean, it's a service that you're providing to the rest of your organization in a lot of cases. And that can turn into a life draining, a life draining, always on, always available type of situation. But the best managers are the people who are like, no, there's like a process for how we do things. If you have something, please submit a ticket. What's the level of the ticket that you submitted? Is it a priority or it's not? Like, wait, I love people like that. And the people who are not like that, I think that all of this COVID and all this like quarantine time, that is going to be a major thing that I think changes going forward from before when we were going to work, because now people do have a glimpse into your personal life. Now people do have a glimpse into like how you said, like, oh, your kid has just walked in the room, or oh, your dog is like barking in the background, or like, oh, your husband is whatever. So I think that now, I hope if you're a good leader, that now you will kind of adapt and adopt a more, I really truly do support work-life balance, and not just like in words.
I agree with that 100%. I think that, if you are a young professional and you are, in the job market, especially now that you will likely be onboarded remotely, if you have skills that you can use remotely, that is something that is so important to ask. What are it's a buzzword now. So people are
Yeah.
gonna say like, oh yeah, we really value work-life balance. But what does that look like for you all? Like, when do people tend to unplug? What does it look like, when people go on vacation? Because we're very familiar with people going on vacation, turning on that out of office message and still getting the emails, still getting the calls, still, when that is your time off, and kind of not being able to do so, right? And so I think that, Ami, that is a great point. And I would actually like to just implore anyone who's going into a leadership position to really think about, the concept of having direct reports, in my opinion, doesn't make you a leader. Just having direct reports doesn't mean that you have the skills to lead. It's actually knowing that every individual person deserves grace and understanding, because they are more than just an employee. They are an entire person. And it shouldn't take somebody having to say, hey, sorry, like my mom is dying of cancer, or, hey, sorry, like my kid has had an asthma attack last night. Like, I shouldn't have to actually even tell you all of these things about, what's going on in my life, besides I'm going to need a mental health day, or I actually am going to need some help with XYZ, and just affording people the grace and saying, you know what, it can wait. Like, it can wait a day, or it can wait 2 days, and not holding that person professionally accountable, or not docking them professionally for not being able to show up 100% of the time, because they're a whole person.
Yeah, I love that. And an additional question that I ask, and I definitely encourage all people that are in like the tech space or in that like IT support type of a space, is to ask what constitutes a fire. So we all know what fires are. We know when it turns into, oh my gosh, like such and such is down and we need to fix it now. It needs to be fixed right now. And you're like, oh my God, right now, stop everything. I like to ask people, what constitutes a fire here, so that now I know. So if they start to tell you things that sound like, huh, that sounds like an everyday problem. And so does that mean that every day you guys have fires? I like to ask, what constitutes a fire? How does leadership here manage the fires. Like, so how do you manage learning that there's a fire? Because there's a difference between there being something that is a fire and now there being leadership that's also on you adding fuel to the fire. Like, you are presently on fire from the problem, and then now you have leadership up here that's like, oh my God, did you fix it now? What's going on? And you, as the worker, are just dying small inside. So that's
I
a
agree.
question. Ask that question as well.
Those are great tips. And lastly, I just want to talk just briefly, just giving examples of how we've ways that it has been very effective, for either of us. And I think my example just involves the freedom that I feel knowing that I have set the boundary ahead of time, because it actually relieves you of having to, explain yourself. Like, people kind of already know what to expect from you. So, while I was in graduate school, I was involved in, a lot of potentially extracurricular activities, but the expectation was that while I was in lab, I was in lab. Like, I was doing my work, I was keeping a very nice notebook, and I was on top of things while I was in lab. But when I was out of lab, I was out of lab. Because again, after we lost our mom, I just realized, like, life is too short to be not doing the things that actually, like, really spark my heart and my brain and really drive me passionately. And so, yes, science is one of those things, but it's just one of those things. And there are so many things to me. And I actually felt like I would even be doing my mom's service or my mom's memory a disservice to not be pursuing all of those aspects of myself. And so once that was established, I didn't really get bothered to do certain things, because I think people just knew, like, okay, if Bandy's not here, like, she's doing something else, like, that is important to her. And that is the only way that's the only reason I was able to, like, get through graduate school after I lost my mom and finish, like, in a reasonable amount of time. And so that absolutely worked for me. Making sure that people, once they know the boundaries and they're sticking to them, it's fantastic from there on out.
Yeah, I think definitely just like being upfront about, like, what your schedule is and everything, that definitely helps. And then being confident enough to stick to it, like, to not start to feel guilty or not start to be like, okay, well, I'll still do that thing or whatever. So for me, I think it's 100% impossible to be in IT and not be kind of available sometimes. So it just comes, I think, with the territory. But I do think that the difference between that previous role that I had, where my life was always on fire, and my most recent role is, like I said, leadership. So leadership difference. But even without that leadership, knowing, okay, is this something that's important? Should I talk to her about it or no? Even without that, I've learned to, I don't want to say manage my manager better, because that sounds way, but kind of. So you learn to teach your leadership things that they should bother you for. So I don't mind. I let it be known that I'm available if something truly is broken, that is, obviously business critical. It's like an enterprise wide issue. No problem. That's my job. I will 1000% make myself available to fix it. Is it going to be like right now? Maybe not. Maybe not. But will it be this evening? Yes, I will totally do it. So letting people know that I'm available for, like, priority one, like, issues after hours, no problem. If it's like a level 3 type problem, no.
Facts.
No. And so letting my leadership know that in the first place, like, if it is a true emergency, call me. If it's not, you too safe tinkam. Leave me.
Well, I totally agree with those statements, especially the don't feel guilty part, and stick to your own boundaries. We could go on and on about this topic, but we really wanted to hear from you all and see if anyone else is either struggling with setting boundaries in your current role, especially in these COVID times, and or even before COVID, where did you ever struggle with keeping your personal life separate from what's going on at work? And have you found that there are potential negative aspects to trying to keep your work life separate from personal that keep you from getting close to your team or forming those bonds that people are forming when they're going out to happy hour, and they're hanging out on the weekends that you're not? So we love to hear from you all, and hear some of your stories. Thank you so much for tuning in with us today. And for those of you who are watching on the replay, go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button. We hope to see you in further videos where we interview amazing Black women in STEM. Go on ahead and leave a comment below. Share this video if you so choose. And we will see you the next time around. Thank you.
Guys. Bye.